Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my review for Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. There will be spoilers, of course, in the second half, as the title says. And no, I will not be wearing this very horrible Spider-Man mask the whole way through, which I'm sure you're wondering, why do I have this horrible mask? And because it only comes up every time I have spider content to talk about, I get to tell this really dumb story of how Facebook will block you from making literally anything except a post to scam people. So, I was supposed to be getting, as you can probably imagine, a really cool Spider-Man mask. And I got this instead. The eyes were supposed to move, by the way. It was supposed to be like full MCU and everything, like, oh, you can blink and the eyes are moving. I was like, oh, that's an amazing deal, as it always is on all the Facebook scams. So I got and I got this. So every once in a while I get to tell that amazing story. I don't know what I did with my Deadpool mask. That one actually looks really nice. I was gonna wear that over this and pull that off to reveal this, but I probably would have died before I even got through like 10 seconds because putting those both on is ridiculous. But Across the Spiderverse is amazing, okay? Like, Into the Spiderverse, it was great. Across the Spiderverse, it's great. I don't know what's gonna happen with Beyond the Spiderverse, which is part 3, but it's gonna be great, I'm sure, like, especially with the way it ended. Oh my goodness, it was insane. So, a couple of things right off the top. It is part 1 of a, technically it's part 2 within a trilogy, but it's part 1 of this whole story that they're doing with this film as well as the next one. A lot of people forgot that because when it first came out, it was specifically done as like, hey, it's Across the Spider-Verse part 1. Like, that was specifically in the details, and then they changed the name to just be Across the Spider-Verse, and then the next one, I think they already had the name for Beyond the Spider-Verse as well. So technically that information had been out there since the beginning. They just changed it, and like, honestly, I think it was like the second trailer they ever put out, which is probably, just like a teaser number 2, and they changed it. So even that was probably like a year ago, if not more. So I understand why a lot of people forgot it, and including myself. I was probably 2/3 through the movie, and I was like, hold on a second. This is part 1 of a 2-part story. And then some crazy stuff happened, which we'll talk about in spoilers, and I forgot again. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. And then it was getting towards the end, and I was like, wow, it's got to be like 20-30 minutes left, because like all this stuff is happening. Like, it's got to be like close to the end. And then things started happening. I was like, wow, this is gonna be nuts. Like, this is gonna be crazy that they wrap this up. And then the ending happened, and like as it was happening is when it dawned on me, because things started to be like, this is an ending sort of conversation. And I was like, oh no, this is where they end it. And then it ended with a to be continued, and I was like, no, because it was such a good ending. It was so good. It was such a good ending. So I'm very excited for the next film. I feel like there's really not that much to say outside of spoilers. Like, it's just really good. If you like Spider-Man, go see it. If you like the last movie and you're just kind of meh on Spider-Man, well, you like the last one, you'll like this one even more, unless you hate the ending. I know that that's really gotten people, even if I didn't remember, because like I said, I remember like 2/3 through, I forgot, and then I remembered as it was happening, and it was still just like, holy crap, because I still loved everything that I got to see. And then that actually made me more excited, because the way the movie was going, forgetting that it was part 1, I was like, okay, they're gonna wrap this up and then it's gonna be done. And then the fact that it ends where it ends, where like there are 2 things now, because it was already going towards like one path, and then a second path opened up, and I'm like, a whole other movie is starting based on these 2 things. I thought we were done within 30 minutes, so I'm hyped, because I'm like, I can't wait to see them expand on what I thought was just going to be the last 20 minutes of them doing this thing and like finding the solution and everything. And then it's like, no, that's part 1. And then there's going to be a part 2, fortunately in March. So that'll be good. We don't have to wait like a super long time, but got to live until March 29th or 21st, something like that of next year. But I was like, okay, I was fine with it. Like I said, it just made me more excited, because I was like, all right, that gives them time to expand on what they introduced towards the end of the film. That it gives them time to expand on what I thought was already the ending, and that was just the beginning of the second film, or the third film, however you want to look at it. So I thought it was great. I was like, all right, I'm super excited. It sucks that it ended, of course, because it's just like, yeah, I would love to just see that continue on. I mean, the movie's already like, was it like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that, which I definitely did not know. I would say you can feel it after a certain point. It's not one of those things where, for me personally, I wasn't really bored or anything like that, but it was definitely like, okay, I feel like I've been in here for a really long time. And that was another part of why I forgot that it was a 2-part thing, because the movie itself is so long, you would think everything does get wrapped up. And then I think that was another great reason to be hyped, in all honesty, because there's so much stuff that they do in this, just for them to not like end it, and then to go into the next film is like, all right, well, that means they can expand on it even further. Who knows if that, if that's going to be another 2 hour and 20-minute film, but there's a lot for them to put in when they do that stuff. And I thought they did a great job with it. So lots of, seeing a lot of the characters come back was definitely good. Also, no post-credit scenes. If you like, I gotta say that, no post-credit sequences. Although if you did stay, for anyone who's already seen it, you already know this, but the credits were actually surprisingly short. They did like, the classic special credits that everybody sits through, and then the regular credits hit, and I was like, that felt like it took 2.5 minutes compared to most movies where it feels like you're sitting there for 10 minutes just on credits alone. It felt like that just went through and it was like, oh, they're already done. It felt like one song played and then it was at the end of the credits. I was like, oh, well, that was short anyway. Like you won't even be there that long if you happen to sit through. So it's one of those things where it's like, there's no end credits, but if you're like me and you already went through that, it wasn't really that long. It was weird how short the credits actually were. I was genuinely shocked. I have never seen credits that short for like an actual film in theaters. I was just like, oh, all right, well, that was it. All right, I guess it's okay that there's no credits. I didn't wait that long to see, nothing at the very end. But I'm definitely excited for the next film. I thought this was great. Miles, of course, is updated and stuff. He's definitely good. It was cool to see Gwen come back as well. As you can see, I got my old Loot Crate pillows. I would have had them swapped, but if I put Miles here, you couldn't see him at all. Like, just the way I have my lighting set up, it was like I have to put the light pillow here and the dark pillow over there. But for whatever reason, the lighting wasn't good on that. But got Gwen, got Miles. We got a lot of other characters. Miguel O'Hara was done amazing justice. I don't know the most about Miguel, but I know they got the one thing that I wanted to see right. And that's all I'm gonna say. I'll talk about that in spoilers, but they got like the one part of him that I really wanted to see. I was like, yeah, that's him. From what I know, that is Miguel O'Hara, and I was happy to see it in this film. So I thought that was great. I thought they did a good job introducing tons of other Spider characters, some of which actually play parts in the story, some of which are just like, oh, there's a cameo and stuff like that. It was great. I don't even want to talk about a lot of the cameos and stuff like that, but it's like it's all there. Like, that's the best way I think I could possibly put it. If you want it, you're probably gonna see it. You're guaranteed to see stuff you won't expect. That I can tell you for sure. But it's great through and through. I thought it was really good. I thought it was funny. Obviously the visuals are fantastic. The characters are great. The action is just insane. Like, the stuff that like they show in trailers, just the full version of that insane spider chase is way crazier than you might expect. Like, it is not short at all. So I definitely loved all of that. I thought it was really good. The story was great. Insane cliffhanger ending. So check it out if you haven't already. I don't know, I might see it again. I never ended up seeing the first movie a second time, even though I loved it. But, or at least not in theaters. I've seen it more than once, but not in theaters. So I might, see this again, who knows, in theaters, but I'll definitely see it again at some point, especially before the third movie comes out. I'm definitely going to do like a trilogy thing where it's like 1, 2, and then go into the movies to see 3 for sure. That'll be like the best way to do it, because people are talking about all this stuff from the first movie where it's like, oh, look at this thing that references this thing that happened in the second movie, and here are hints and stuff that they already had laid out in the very first movie. So there's stuff there to go back and look at to be like, huh. And there's things that they did that were tied into the story that even in the first movie, it was technically a part of the story. They just never talked about it. They show you that it's there, and then they introduce like the concept of that thing later on. But it was like, well, that was in the first movie the whole time, and none of us were really paying any attention to it. And I was like, well, that is really neat. So I can't wait to see what they have laid out for the third film. But that's it for non-spoilers. Go check it out. It's amazing. That's all there is to it. All the hype, I think, is worth it. And that's really it. It's a good year for Spider-Man. We got this with Spider-Man 2. I'm very excited for it. And then we got Beyond the Spider-Verse coming out in March. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But getting into full-on spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, do not watch this. Man, that ending was crazy, okay? Miles being the Prowler in Earth 42 was so good. I was like, okay, this is sweet. His uncle is back. And then he gets knocked out, like things are weird and stuff like that. We find out he's on a different Earth and they even show it. It's one of those things, much like with the spider glitching in the first movie, which is the thing I was talking about, because I saw that on Twitter, where it was like, oh, when he first runs into Peter in the first movie, his spider senses are green and purple, like the Prowler colors, and then they change into Spider-Man colors. That is a reference, which it could be total coincidence, but it does seem like that's one of those little hints that they had laid out, where if you watch the second movie and then go back to that scene, it's like, oh, he was supposed to become Prowler, and that's what happened. Like, he was supposed to be Prowler in his universe, and I would assume Miles in Earth 42 was supposed to become Spider-Man, or maybe it was just going to be another Peter. But I think that was the thing, is that technically those two Miles were the big characters. So he was supposed to become Prowler, and that other Miles that is Prowler was supposed to be the Spider-Man, and then their worlds basically flipped. So I thought that was super cool. Like, I was like, man, that is an insane way to end it. And then once again, forgetting that it was like, part one of the two films, I'm like, okay, he's gonna have to fight himself, and then he's got to do that. Like, man, they got like 20 minutes to do this. He got to fight himself as Prowler. He still has to beat the Spot. He still has to save his dad. And then they did the whole gang, and then, you know, Gwen was doing the narrating at the very end, and she got the crew together. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. And I was like, hold on a second, Nicolas Cage isn't in this movie, but they showed Spider-Man Noir. Dang, this is the end of the movie. They had Spider-Ham and everything. I was like, oh crap, this is the end. And they have like the cool gang thing where they spread out, and then of course to be continued. But that was wild. I don't know how they're gonna end up finding out that I guess it would be simple, honestly, because she did have Spider-Bite at the end as well. She ended up joining their team, so she could easily tell them, well, he was sent to Earth 42, and so that might be where they already are, but I'm not entirely sure. When they show like that ending sequence, I don't know if they're actually on Earth 42. They just show them all come out of a portal, so I don't know what world they're actually on, but I would assume it's Earth 42, because if she had Spider-Bite, she could instantly just be like, oh yeah, he went to Earth 42, and that's, you know, that's exactly where they, you know, head right off to. But man, that was a great way to end it, where I was like, okay, they got all this crazy stuff. The Spot goes from just a hilarious introduction where he's, you know, trying to steal this dude's ATM, and he's like, you know, like, hey, it's not even really your money, it's the ATM, and yo, they're the bad guys, they, you know, steal money. I think he mentioned taxes or something silly, and it was like, okay, this dude just keeps upgrading further and further as the movie goes along. And it was super cool, because it started off, of course, where he's just can't figure things out. Like, he's got bread falling through his stomach, he's fighting with Spider-Man has to tie him up and, you know, all over the place to keep him stuck together, and then of course he escapes. And then as he goes through, especially when he end up, you know, kind of jumping into the multiverse, not only do we get a reference to Venom, where he pops out, and I forgot what her name was, but he talks to the lady that knows about Venom and everything, and she's just like, yeah, whatever, dude. So I was like, that's a great reference. Hate those movies, but that was a funny reference. I was like, okay, I can at least appreciate that, even if those movies suck to me really bad. Aside from the post-credit sequence of the first Venom movie being the clip of Into the Spider-Verse, which tricked me into thinking, man, Venom was really fun. I realized that halfway through that review that I hated Venom, but man, Into the Spider-Verse, that one clip I saw as a post-credit scene, that made me really happy. And then the movie was great, and then this movie was great. So fortunately, even with that reference, everything's fantastic. So he's jumping through the multiverse, everything's super cool. And then when they just invert it at the end, and instead of him being white with black spots, he's all black with the white spots, and he's just like almost like ink blotches and stuff. I thought it was great. I was like, that is a great way to change him from this funny character and to watch his development as he's like, I'm not just gonna be your villain of the week, I am your nemesis. You hit me with the bagel, amazing callback to that. And then I was also there when you blew up the collider. I almost called it the kaleidoscope, but you blew up the collider. So I made you and you made me, and I thought that's just super cool. Like, it's just a really cool way to do that. And I'm curious if they'll tie that into Spot actually going to Earth 42 and realizing like, oh, because you sent that spider over, like, I didn't choose to be bit by that spider, that just happened because of your experiments and stuff. What is the Prowler gonna think of that? Like, you're the reason that my Earth is like this, and I'm kind of on this path when I could have had his powers and my dad could have been alive. And so maybe they'll team up somehow to end up fighting the Spot, and he'll actually join the team at the end. That would be pretty sick. But we'll see what happens all in all in the third film. But this one was so good. Miguel was so good. My favorite thing that I mentioned that they did for him, from what I know of the character, is that he was just brutal. Like, that's his character. He is that Spider-Man. Like, a lot of the Peters and stuff, that's been, of course, a really big topic as of late, which is like, you know, would all these other Spider characters really side with Miguel O'Hara versus, you know, siding with Miles? And it's like, you know, we have Spectacular Spider-Man, who actually had straight up lines. He wasn't just in it. He spoke. Like, Josh Keaton was like, you know, Miles, this is what I was like, holy crap, they gave him like lines. And they even had like extra stuff that doesn't even happen in Spectacular Spider-Man, where he was with Captain Stacy and he dies in that. And I was like, man, was that always planned for this show? Because that's insane. That would be really cool. But that was nuts. I was like, holy crap, he was in it. They had not only did they have Genki playing, I'm pretty sure it was Spider-Man 2 and not the first Spider-Man game, so he's playing Spider-Man 2, but they have Insomniac Spider-Man. I love the fact that they went so hardcore on the comic thing that they would have like the little editorial stuff where it was, especially when Spider-Punk was talking, it was like, you know, Scooby-Doo is slang for having a clue and stuff like that. I was like, that's super cool. And there's the one scene where they go past like everybody and there's just a million, you know, rectangles popping up for all the information. All of that was super cool, but Miguel being tough was really good. I don't know 100% how I feel about all the other characters going through that process and agreeing with them. I think it just takes time, you know, to kind of accept that every other Spider person would do that, especially because it's like, oh, would I really expect, you know, Spectacular Spider-Man to do that? Would I really expect, you know, the animated series Spider-Man to do that? Which I hope they get the dude to do that in the next movie, because he was in there. It's the guy who, it was of course from I forgot what the heck they called it. I think they called it Ultimate Spider-Man when that was the cartoon back in the day after Spider-Man the animated series, and it was never like officially said that it was 100% like the sequel series, but it was always meant to be. It was a totally different voice actor. He changes the costume. He literally leaves Earth and goes off to another planet, but it was supposed to be like the sequel series to the animated series, but they also never touched on anything that happened in the animated series. So that's still kind of up in the air, I believe, but hopefully they get him back. They could say something, do whatever. Just get the dude. I can't think of his name. I think his last name is Barnes, who voiced Peter / Spider-Man in the old animated series. So hopefully they get him in this final film, because I'm like, all right, there was still a voice missing. Technically, Neil Patrick Harris wasn't in it either, and that's like the other really famous person that was Spider-Man. For anyone who doesn't know, he was Spider-Man in the MTV Spider-Man show that was like more mature. Like they said, I remember the first time I saw it, and they said like damn or something. I was like, whoa, what is this Spider-Man show? So, there's that. But yeah, so we got like 2 voices that are still kind of missing. So they still got the 3rd movie to get those guys in there and have them voice characters and stuff like that, do some other extra references. The Prowler stuff, that was insane. Not just like the ending, but actually having quite a few. Well, technically there was 1 live action cameo. Them just using the footage, I don't count as a live action cameo. They used, the footage is footage from the films, which is still really cool. I still love that. But seeing a straight up live action Prowler and then being like, okay, anything could happen here that could in the future be an MCU version of the Prowler, or it could just be a real cool thing where they're like, hey, Donald Glover, all the connections you have with being, Miles Morales, he's the reason that kind of kicked off. He was the first voice of Miles Morales in Ultimate Spider-Man, the other Ultimate Spider-Man. So, and he was Prowler in the very first Spider-Man movie. He was, at the very least, he was Uncle Davis. So, or Uncle Aaron, I don't know, Uncle Davis. He was Uncle Aaron in that. So bringing that all full circle was like, okay, that was super cool. That was an amazing reference to have that there, and a super surprise cameo. So I love that for sure. But all the cameos they did were amazing. All the references, the characters just in the distance and stuff like that. Penny actually showed up in this, which really shocked me. I didn't think they were going to have any of the people from the last movie except for Gwen, in all honesty. I thought it was just going to be Gwen and older Peter, I guess, whatever they want to call him. So those are only 2 characters I thought were going to be in it, because I knew Spider-Man Noir wasn't in it, and I believe I'd heard Spider-Ham wasn't, or maybe it was just like I hadn't heard anything about that, but I just assumed like, all right, that they're just not going to be in it, and then we might see them later. There's a 3rd film for them to bring all them back, which is obviously the plan. Like with the way they ended, it was like they brought back the whole crew from the first film, so they plan on getting all those voice actors back. I thought Penny looked cool. It was cool that she's older, and especially at the end you actually see her, like she has a straight up jacket and stuff. I was like, okay, that's a pretty cool design. Her robot is obviously different, so that was pretty sweet. But everything was good. The action was good. The story was like really emotional, especially them starting with Gwen. I thought was very surprising. That was like 20 minutes before we got like the opening actual title card to the movie, and then cut to Miles, and it was like, this is sick. Like they went through her official origin. Like I think they mentioned it in the first movie, that it was Peter and how he died, and then it was like, here's like the full definitive version of how it happens. And it's like, it's straight out of the comic books. That is her origin 100%. They just did the added twist of when her dad found out, she also ended up leaving the entire dimension. That's a little different from her actual comic storyline, but everything up to that point, and also obviously not fighting Vulture from like, the Renaissance dimension, which was super cool with him having like the painter or like the drawing style, and that's actually how he looked at people. That was sick. So everything they did with her was like her actual storyline. Her Earth was like watercolor paintings, and I love the way they utilize the colors changing based on the emotion. And I thought it was just changing at first. It was like, okay, that's kind of, that's Spider-Verse. It just changes and whatever. And it was like, oh no, it's turning blue when things are sad. And then it changes based on the emotions of the characters, and things start to take less shape when it becomes more emotion based. And so then the background starts to fade out even more so as it goes along. And then it just becomes like, it's just a wall of colors behind them. And I was like, that's actually a really cool idea, because the whole world is already watercolor based. And then you see it when they're having the conversations, things start to become less and less defined as the intensity, the emotions ramp up, the definition of the world around them is sort of drowned out. Kind of like in real life, when you have that sort of deep conversation, everything else starts to fade away, and it's just you and that person. So it's just colors and things just kind of in the background around you. I was like, that's a really cool way to do that. So I thought that was super cool. Obviously the animation as a whole was fantastic, but action good, story good, whether it was spider stuff or just like the family stuff was really good. The twist at the end, of course, him trying to reveal the truth to his mom, and then it's like, oh snap, he's not on the right planet, which they hint at because of the colors, and they even straight up say he's going to Earth 42. But I'm watching the movie, I'm not thinking about any of that stuff and like what his planet, his Earth is called or designated. So all of that absolutely amazing. Cannot wait for them to hit us with the next film. I'm curious what they'll do with Jessica Drew. She doesn't get as much in this, like, at all, honestly, as I thought she would. She was not nearly as much of a player as I was expecting her to be, considering it was like that was the new introduction of the new Spider character. So I actually hope we get to see more of her going into the next film. But it was great. It was still great, no matter what. Little things weren't really there. So I'm happy. I'm super happy with it. Of course, with the way it ended, I'm just like, yeah, I could have watched another 2 straight hours right then, because a lot of people have said that. I feel the same way. I was like, no, I want to know right now. Like, I'll watch the whole movie if I have to. I will watch the whole thing right now if you want me to do that. But sadly, we have to wait. We'll see what they bring into the next film. I'm very excited to see them have the Spider crew come in, including, characters from the first movie as well as the ones introduced in this one that are willing to help out Miles. How in the world they're going to solve this problem of changing a canon event and also, saving, each timeline, which I would assume they beat the Spot, figure something out with that, maybe just convince him, hey, my bad, but also you kind of did, Spider-Man talky stuff. Figure it out. He'll be like, all right, cool. I'll at least save these other timelines. I'm not trying to kill them. I'm just trying to kill you. But then ultimately he turns out okay. I don't know. They'll figure something out, of course, because it has to work. And if it doesn't, that's an even crazier way to do the next movie. But we'll see. All in all, fantastic. I would love to know your thoughts on what you guys felt about everything, the cameos, the story itself, definitely the ending, because of course a lot of people forgot from over a year ago, and they're like, this is definitely part 1, and they kind of cut that, which some people even straight up said, like, I would have waited a year to just watch it. That's why they did that, by the way. It's a marketing thing. If they say part 1, people will be like, well, I don't want to do that, and then be like, oh man, I really want to see the next one now. I'll just wait till the next one's about to come out, and then I'll just watch it, because people will do that. So I think that was their big marketing thing. It was like, we'll just pluck that part 1 off and just be like, across the Spider-Verse. So I can understand why people are a bit upset about that, especially if you didn't remember or just didn't know in general. If you don't really follow it, you probably never even realized that. You didn't see it until the main trailer really came out. But I was fine with it. Great way to end it, especially, like I said, has me hyped, considering I thought it was the ending, and then they can just spend 2 extra hours on the stuff they end on with Miles versus Miles, and then whatever's going to happen with the Spot, bring in the whole crew. I think that's worth another 2.5 hours. Personally, I'm okay with it. But we'd love to know your thoughts on all things Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, and Beyond the Spider-Verse. Heck, if you just want to talk about Spider-Man 2 coming out this year, that's fine too. Anything Spider-Man, just drop it below. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.